The phone was hidden inside a box of Christmas decorations. Not in her purse, not under the mattress, not in a drawer. Inside a faded red ornament box in the back of our attic. The same box my wife had told me she hadn't opened in years. I almost threw it away. Then the phone vibrated. One message appeared on the screen. "He still believes you. When are you finally going to leave him?" I froze. For 11 years, I had believed I knew my wife. I knew the way she took her coffee. I knew she hated thunderstorms. I knew she cried during old romantic movies but pretended. She had something in her eye. I knew she always stole the crispy edges from the lasagna. I knew she kissed our daughter on the forehead every night before bed. I knew the sound of her footsteps coming down the stairs. Or at least I thought I did. Because that one message didn't just tell me my wife might be cheating. It told me there was an entire part of her life I had never been allowed to see. And what I discovered afterward was far more painful than an affair. It was a secret that had been growing quietly inside our marriage for years. A secret that would force me to choose between revenge and forgiveness. Between destroying the woman who had betrayed me and saving the family I thought I had already lost. My name is Daniel Carter, and this is how one forgotten phone changed everything. I met Emily when I was 28. I wasn't rich. I wasn't particularly handsome. And I definitely wasn't the kind of man who walked into a room and made everyone notice. I worked as a project manager for a small construction company outside Columbus, Ohio. My life was simple. Work. Home. Gym when I had time. Dinner with friends on weekends. Nothing exciting. Then one rainy Tuesday evening, I walked into a little coffee shop because I had forgotten my umbrella. Emily was behind the counter. She looked at me soaked from head to toe and laughed. "You look miserable." I looked down at my shirt. "I've had better days." She handed me a towel. "Coffee? Please. Something sweet?" I smiled. "Is that your way of saying I look like I need sugar?" "No," she said. Then she smiled. "It's my way of saying you look like a man who needs someone to take care of him." That was the first time I fell in love with her. Not because of what she said, because of the way she said it. Like she genuinely cared. We talked for almost an hour. The coffee shop closed at 8. We didn't realize it was 9:30. When I finally stood up to leave, Emily wrote her number on the back of my receipt. "Call me." I looked at the number. "What if I don't?" She shrugged. "Then I'll assume you're intimidated." I laughed. "I'll call." I did. The next morning, at 7:03, she answered immediately. "You waited until morning?" I didn't want to seem desperate. "You failed." That became our joke. 3 months later, I proposed. She said yes before I finished asking. 2 years later, we had our daughter, Lily. And for the next 11 years, I believed I had everything. A beautiful wife, a wonderful daughter, a comfortable home, a stable career, a life that wasn't perfect, but was ours. I never imagined that one day I'd discover my wife had a phone I'd never seen before. The first sign something was wrong wasn't the phone. It was Emily changing her password. She had always used the same 6-digit code. Our daughter's birthday. One evening, I needed to use her phone because mine had died. I picked it up. The screen asked for a password. I smiled. "Hey, what did you change your password to?" Emily looked up from the kitchen. "Why?" I laughed. "Because your phone apparently doesn't recognize me anymore." She walked over and took it from my hand. "I just changed it." "Why?" She shrugged. "Security." That was all. I didn't think much about it. A month later, she started taking her phone everywhere. Bathroom, laundry room, garage, even when she walked outside to check the mail. One night I teased her. "Are you carrying state secrets?" She smiled. "No." "What then?" "Nothing." I believed her. Because trusting your wife isn't supposed to require evidence. That's the thing nobody tells you about betrayal. You don't notice the lie because you don't expect one. You build a life around trust. And when trust disappears, you suddenly realize how much of your world was standing on top of it. 3 months later, Emily started working late. At first, it was once a week. Then twice. Then almost every Thursday. She worked as a marketing director for a medical equipment company. Late meetings weren't unusual, so I didn't question them. One Thursday night, I made dinner. Lily and I waited. 8 o'clock. 9? 9:30. At 9:47, Emily finally walked through the door. "You're still awake?" I looked at her. "Yeah." She kissed Lily on the forehead. "Sorry, sweetheart." Lily hugged her. "Mommy, you missed movie night." "I know." She looked guilty. That guilt made me feel bad for even being suspicious. "I saved you some pasta," I said. "I'm not hungry." She walked upstairs. I watched her go, and for the first time I wondered if something had changed. Not because she was late, because she didn't look tired. She looked happy. The next morning I found a receipt in her car. A restaurant. 2 dinners. 1 bottle of wine. Thursday night. The same night she had told me she was working late. The receipt was folded neatly inside the center console. I stared at it. My heart started beating faster. But I forced myself to think rationally. Maybe she had dinner with coworkers. Maybe it was a client. Maybe the receipt meant nothing. I put it back. I didn't confront her. That night I almost did. Instead, I asked casually, "How was work yesterday?" "Busy." "Did you eat?" "Yeah." "What did you have?" She looked at me. For half a second, she hesitated. Then she said, "Salad." My stomach dropped. I knew she had eaten steak, but I didn't say anything. I nodded. "Sounds healthy?" She smiled. "Very?" And that was the first lie I knew for certain. A few weeks later, Emily suggested we clean the attic. It was Saturday. Lily was at a friend's house. Emily wanted to organize Christmas decorations before winter. We spent 2 hours going through boxes. Old photographs. Baby clothes. Broken ornaments. School projects. Then Emily's phone rang. She glanced at the screen. Her expression changed. "Who is it?" I asked. "Nobody." She walked downstairs. I watched her disappear. Something inside me whispered, "Look." But I didn't. I didn't want to become the husband who searched through his wife's phone. I wanted to trust her. So I kept cleaning. An hour later, Emily said she had to run an errand. "I'll be back soon." "Where are you going?" "Target." She grabbed her purse and left. I stayed upstairs. I reached for another box. That's when I found the phone. At first, I thought it was an old device. The screen was black. I almost put it back. Then it vibrated. I looked at it. A message appeared. "He still believes you. When are you finally going to leave him?" My entire body went cold. I read it again. Then again. There was no name. Just a number. Another message appeared. "Daniel deserves to know." I couldn't breathe. The attic suddenly felt smaller. The air felt heavy. I sat on the floor. My hands were shaking. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to throw the phone against the wall. I wanted to call Emily. I wanted to scream. Instead, I stared at the screen. Then another message arrived. "You promised me he would never find out." I closed my eyes. My marriage was collapsing in real time. And I was sitting in the middle of the attic, surrounded by Christmas decorations. The same decorations Emily and I had packed together every year. The same ornaments Lily had made in kindergarten. The same memories I had believed were real. I finally understood something. The worst part of betrayal isn't discovering that someone lied. It's realizing how many moments you remember differently afterward. I didn't open the messages. Not yet. I put the phone back exactly where I found it. Then I sat there for 20 minutes. I thought about Emily. I thought about Lily. I thought about our wedding, our first apartment, our daughter's birth, our family vacations, the night Lily got sick and Emily stayed awake beside her until morning, the time I lost my job for 3 months and Emily told me we'd be okay. Were those moments real? Or had I been living inside a story Emily was pretending to believe? When she returned, I was downstairs. She walked in carrying 2 shopping bags. "Sorry, the line was crazy." I looked at her. She smiled. I smiled back. "It's okay." That was the hardest smile I'd ever given. Because now I knew. Something was happening. And I wasn't going to confront her until I understood what. That night, Emily went to bed early. I waited. House dogs. 1:30. Midnight. When I was sure she was asleep, I went downstairs. I sat at the kitchen table. The house was silent. I remembered the old phone. I went back upstairs. The attic door creaked. I found the box. The phone was still there. I picked it up. There was no password. I opened the messages. My hands trembled. There were hundreds, months of conversations. The person texting her was named Michael. I didn't know a Michael in her life. The first messages were casual. Thinking about you. Wish you were here. I miss us. Then they became more intimate. I hate lying to him. You said you were going to tell him. I need more time. Does he suspect anything? No, Daniel trusts me. I stopped reading. My eyes burned. Then I saw something that made my stomach twist. A photo. Emily and Michael sitting together at a restaurant. The same restaurant from the receipt. Her head resting against his shoulder. His hand around her waist. I felt something inside me break. I kept scrolling. There were hotel reservations. Dinner plans. Messages about meetings. Messages about me. Some were cruel. Some were casual. Some were heartbreaking. But then I found something I didn't understand. Michael wrote, "You can't keep doing this. Tell Daniel the truth about Lily." I froze. I read it again. The truth about Lily. What truth? I kept scrolling. Emily replied, "Don't ever say that over text again. Michael. He deserves to know." Emily. "I'm protecting her." I stared at the screen. What did Lily have to do with Michael? Then I saw the message that destroyed everything I thought I knew. "She is my daughter, too." I dropped the phone. I sat on the attic floor until sunrise. I didn't cry. Not at first. I was too shocked. My daughter. My little girl. Lily. Was she mine? I remembered the day she was born. Emily holding her. Me crying. The nurse handing me our baby. Emily whispering, "She's yours." Had she known? Had she lied to me from the beginning? I wanted to wake Emily up. I wanted answers. But I was afraid. Afraid that if I asked the question, the answer would destroy the last piece of my family I still had. So I waited. At 6:15, I went downstairs. Emily walked into the kitchen at 6:40. She smiled. "Morning." I looked at her. "Morning." She poured coffee. I watched her hands. They were steady. Mine weren't. She kissed me on the cheek. "Did you sleep?" "Not much." "Everything okay?" I looked directly into her eyes. "Yeah." She smiled. And that was the moment I realized something. She wasn't just lying to me. She was watching me to see if I knew. That morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to call Michael. I wasn't going to tell Lily. I wasn't going to file for divorce that afternoon. I needed the truth. All of it. Not half, not guesses, everything. So I hired a private investigator. His name was Robert Hayes. He was an older man with gray hair and a calm voice. I showed him the messages. He read them silently. Then he looked at me. "You want to know if your wife is having an affair?" I shook my head. "I already know that." "What do you want to know?" I swallowed. "Whether my daughter is mine." Robert didn't answer immediately. Finally, he said, "Then we'll find out." For the next 3 weeks, my life became a nightmare of waiting. Robert followed Emily. He documented meetings, restaurants, hotels, phone calls. And yes, Michael. His full name was Michael Bennett. He worked for the same company as Emily. They had known each other for 6 years. 6 years. I felt sick. But there was more. They weren't just lovers. They had been planning something. Emily had been transferring money from a joint savings account. Small amounts, $500, $700, $1,000. Nothing large enough to trigger my attention. Over 3 years, she had moved nearly $48,000. The money was going into an account under her name. I asked Robert why. He said, "We're still investigating." Then he gave me one more piece of information. Michael had a daughter, a teenage girl, and her mother had died 2 years earlier. I didn't understand the connection until Robert found the birth certificate. The birth certificate said Lily's biological father was Daniel Carter. Me. I stared at the document. "Are you sure?" Robert nodded. The DNA test confirms it. I felt a wave of relief. My daughter was mine. But that relief lasted only seconds, because now I had another question. Why had Michael claimed she was his? Robert looked at me. We need to dig deeper. And we did. The truth came out slowly. 6 years earlier, Emily had been struggling at work. Her company had almost fired her. Michael was her supervisor. He helped her keep her job. They became friends, then close friends, then something more. But there was one detail Emily had never told me. Michael had threatened her. Not physically, financially. He had access to private company information. He knew Emily had made mistakes in a major marketing contract. He threatened to expose her unless she gave him money. At first, she paid. Then he wanted more. Then he demanded an affair. Emily made a terrible decision. She didn't tell me. She tried to handle it herself. And by the time she realized she couldn't control Michael, she was already trapped. But that wasn't the whole story, because Robert discovered something else. Michael wasn't the only person Emily had been paying. She had been paying an attorney, and that attorney had been helping her prepare something. A trust. For Lily. I didn't understand. Until Emily finally confessed. I confronted her on a Tuesday evening. Lily was at her grandmother's house. Emily was making dinner. I walked into the kitchen. "Emily!" She turned. "Yeah? We need to talk." She looked at me and immediately knew. Her face went pale. "What did you find?" I put the old phone on the counter. She stopped breathing. For several seconds, neither of us moved. Then she whispered, "How?" "I found it in the attic." She sat down. I remained standing. "Who is Michael?" She closed her eyes. "You already know. I want to hear it from you." She started crying. "I made a mistake." I laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. "A mistake?" She covered her face. "I never meant for it to become this." "How long?" She didn't answer. "How long, Emily?" 6 years? I felt like the floor disappeared beneath me. 6 years. Half our marriage. Half of Lily's childhood. Half of everything. "Did you love him?" She shook her head. "Not the way you think." "That doesn't answer my question." "No." She looked at me. "I never loved him." "Then why?" "Because I was scared." "Of what?" She cried harder. "He threatened me." I stared at her. "What?" She told me everything. The job. The threats. The money. The affair. The lies. The secret account. And finally, the part about Lily. Michael told me he would tell you that he was Lily's father. He knew she wasn't? Yes. Then why say it? Because he knew you'd panic. I felt sick. And you let me believe he was? I never believed he was her father. Then why didn't you tell me? She looked down. Because I was ashamed. I sat across from her. "Emily, you didn't just hide an affair." "I know." "You stole money from our family." "I know." "You lied to me for 6 years." "I know." "You made me question whether my daughter was mine." "I know." She looked at me through tears. "But there's something you don't know." I waited. She reached into a drawer, pulled out a folder, and placed it in front of me. Inside were documents, bank statements, legal papers, and one handwritten letter. It was addressed to me. I opened it. The letter began, "Daniel, if you're reading this, then I finally lost the courage to tell you myself." I kept reading. Emily explained that the $48,000 wasn't for herself. She had been saving it for Lily. She wanted to create an emergency fund in case Michael ever came after our family. She had also hired an attorney to protect Lily financially. She had been preparing to leave her job. And leave Michael. She had planned to tell me everything. But every time she tried, fear stopped her. Then I reached the final paragraph. "I know you may never forgive me. But please don't let my cowardice make you believe you weren't loved. You were. Every morning. Every birthday. Every Christmas. Every night I watched you sleep. I loved you. I just didn't know how to save myself without hurting you." I put the letter down. For the first time, I cried. Not because I forgave her. Because I finally understood something. People don't always betray you because they don't love you. Sometimes people make terrible choices because they're afraid, and fear can turn good people into strangers. But understanding isn't the same as forgiveness. I told Emily to leave. She stayed with her sister. For 3 weeks, we didn't speak except about Lily. Those 3 weeks were brutal. Lily asked, "Why isn't Mom home?" I told her, "Mom and Dad are having some grown-up problems." She asked, "Are you getting divorced?" I didn't know what to say. So I said, "We're trying to figure things out." One night, Lily came into my room. She climbed onto the bed. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "Did Mom do something bad?" I looked at my daughter. I couldn't lie, but I couldn't tell her everything. So I said, "Mom made some choices that hurt me." Lily looked down. "Does that mean you don't love her anymore?" I thought about that. Then I answered honestly, "I don't know." She nodded. Then she hugged me and whispered, "I still love you both." That sentence broke my heart. Because children don't understand betrayal. They only understand home. And I realized I wasn't fighting for my marriage anymore. I was fighting to make sure my daughter didn't lose her family, because 2 adults had made terrible choices. Meanwhile, Michael became desperate. He contacted Emily. He threatened her. Then he contacted me. He wanted to meet. I agreed. We met at a diner. Michael sat across from me. He looked completely ordinary. That was the strangest part. I expected a monster, but he looked like a normal man. He said, "You think Emily chose you?" I said nothing. She stayed because she was afraid. I leaned forward. "Did you threaten her?" He smiled. "She made her choices." I stared at him. "You manipulated her." "No." "You blackmailed her." He didn't answer. "You made her believe you'd destroy her career." Silence. Then I said, "You knew Lily wasn't yours." His expression changed. "I never said she was mine." "You told Emily you would tell me she was." He shrugged. "You don't understand what happened." "No." I stood up. "I understand exactly what happened." I left. But before I walked out, I turned around. "You made one mistake." He looked at me. "You thought fear would keep her trapped forever." Then I walked away. The next morning, Robert gave me everything. Emails, financial records, threats, evidence, enough to prove what Michael had done. Emily went to the police. The company launched an investigation. Michael was fired. He faced legal consequences for financial crimes and blackmail. But something unexpected happened. Emily resigned from her job. She didn't want to return to the same environment. She started therapy. Not because therapy could erase what happened, because she needed to understand why she had stayed silent for so long. I started therapy too, for anger, for betrayal, for grief, because I had lost something. Even if my marriage survived, the version of it I believed in was gone, and I had to mourn that. Months passed. Emily and I slowly began talking again. At first only about Lily, then about groceries, school, bills, family events. Then one evening Emily asked, "Do you hate me?" I looked at her. "No." She started crying. "I wish you did." "Why?" "Because it would be easier." I understood. Hate is simple. Forgiveness isn't. I told her, "I don't hate you." She nodded. "But I don't trust you." "I know. And I don't know if I ever will." "I know." She wiped her eyes. Then she said, "I'll spend the rest of my life trying." That was the first time I believed her. Not because of her words, because she stopped asking me to forgive her. She simply accepted that rebuilding trust would be her responsibility. A year later, Emily and I were sitting at Lily's school play. She was on stage singing with her classmates. Emily sat beside me. Our shoulders almost touched. Neither of us spoke. When Lily finished, she looked into the audience. She saw us sitting together. Her face lit up. She smiled. Emily reached for my hand. I hesitated. Then I let her hold it. Not because everything was fixed. It wasn't. Not because I had forgotten. I hadn't. But because sometimes healing doesn't begin when the pain disappears. It begins when you decide the pain won't control the rest of your life. 2 years after I found that phone, our marriage looked completely different. Emily changed careers. She started working for a nonprofit organization, helping women who were trapped in abusive or controlling situations. She told me she wanted to use what happened to help other people recognize warning signs sooner. I respected that. We went to counseling. We learned how to talk again, not as husband and wife, as two human beings. We learned to say, I'm scared. I'm angry. I don't understand. I need help. Those words were harder than I love you, because love had never been our problem. Honesty was. Eventually, we renewed our vows. Not in a huge ceremony, no expensive venue, no 100 guests. Just our daughter, Emily's sister, my parents, and a few close friends. We stood in the backyard of our home, the same house where everything had almost fallen apart. Emily looked at me. She held my hands. I can't promise I'll never make another mistake. I smiled slightly. I don't need perfection. What do you need? The truth. She nodded. I can promise you that. Then I said, and I promise I won't punish you forever for something you have spent years trying to repair. She cried. I cried. Lily cried. And somehow, we laughed too. Because life is strange. Sometimes the place where your heart breaks becomes the place where you learn how strong it really is. I still have that phone. Not because I want to remember the betrayal. I keep it in a drawer. The battery is dead. The screen is cracked. It's just an old piece of technology now. But every once in a while I see it. And I remember the man I was when I found it. A man sitting alone in an attic, terrified that his entire life was a lie. He thought discovering the truth would destroy him. But it didn't. The truth hurt. It hurt more than anything I had ever experienced. But eventually, the truth gave me something the lies never could. A choice. I could choose to leave. I could choose to stay. I could choose anger. I could choose forgiveness. I could choose to become bitter. Or I could choose to heal. And I chose healing. Not for Emily. Not even for Lily. For myself. Because betrayal can take your trust. It can take your confidence. It can take years of your life. But it doesn't have to take your future. Years later, Lily asked me about that time. She was 16, old enough to understand. She asked, Dad, why did you stay? I thought about it for a long time. Then I said, I didn't stay because I was afraid to leave. She waited. I stayed because your mom eventually told me the truth, took responsibility, and worked every day to become someone I could trust again. Lily nodded. Do you trust her now? I smiled. Yes. All the way? I looked at Emily across the room. She was laughing with her sister. I smiled. Trust isn't a light switch. Lily looked confused. It doesn't just turn on or off. I continued. It's more like a garden. You have to take care of it every day. She thought about that. Then she said, So Mom has to keep watering it? I laughed. So do I. She smiled. Then she hugged me, and I realized something. The secret phone had changed my life. But it didn't define my life. The affair didn't define our marriage. The betrayal didn't define Emily. And the pain didn't define me. What mattered was what we did after the truth came out. There is one final thing I learned. People often say, if someone cheats, leave immediately. And sometimes that's absolutely the right decision. There are situations where forgiveness isn't safe. There are situations where staying only causes more damage. I understand that now. But I also learned that every marriage has its own story. There is no universal answer. Sometimes you walk away. Sometimes you rebuild. Sometimes you forgive but don't return. Sometimes you love someone and still choose to leave them. And sometimes, two broken people decide to build something new from the pieces. My marriage didn't survive because I forgot what happened. It survived because we stopped pretending it didn't happen. Emily stopped hiding. I stopped pretending I wasn't hurt. We stopped protecting the image of our marriage and started protecting the truth. Today, I don't say my marriage is perfect. It isn't, but it is honest. And strangely enough, that makes it stronger than the marriage I thought I had before. Because now when Emily says she loves me, I don't have to wonder what she's hiding. When she says she's going somewhere, I don't need to investigate. When her phone rings, I don't feel my stomach tighten. Not because phones can't hide secrets, but because trust has finally become something we both understand. Something fragile, something valuable, something worth protecting. And if I could go back to that day in the attic, I wouldn't tell my younger self to ignore the phone. I wouldn't tell him to destroy it either. I'd tell him one simple thing. The truth is going to hurt you, Daniel, but it won't destroy you, because sometimes the thing you're most afraid to discover is the very thing that finally sets you free. And sometimes, the end of the life you thought you had is the beginning of the life you were meant to live. If this story touched your heart, remember this. You can survive betrayal, you can survive heartbreak, and you can rebuild your life after someone breaks your trust. You don't have to become bitter. You don't have to become cold. You just have to choose what kind of person you want to be after the pain. Because people may hurt you. They may lie to you. They may leave you. But they don't get to decide who you become. That choice is still yours.